right there. Why children with autism don't like to be touched? There's something wrong in the nervous system that turns the volume control of the senses up. You know, when I was a little kid, certain loud noises, it just hurt. You know, being hugged, it was like too much stimulation. And there's still things about this that are not understood. My #1 research priority in autism is sensory, because people with severe sensory, and they can be smart, even computer programmer people, can have sensory problems so bad that they can't tolerate a normal office. They're living in a dark house because of, you know, light sensitivity or sound sensitivity. And these sensory issues can be extremely debilitating. And a lot of these big, you know, rage attacks that sometimes happen due to sensory. This needs to be researched. And the other thing I'm just horrified is the amount of drugs they're giving out like candy. And as I travel around the country, I'm finding that certain regions of the country, it's just absolutely a medical wasteland. I take antidepressants. The movie showed me before I went on antidepressant medication, and I really did have to eat all that yogurt because I was getting ulcerative colitis. You know, and then I'd weaned myself off the yogurt back onto regular food. Took antidepressants in 1980, it stopped. You know, when meds work right, they really work, and I write about that in Thinking in Pictures, so I've got a whole chapter just on that. But I'm horrified at the amount of Risperdal that's been given out to 5-year-olds. You know, it's a massive, uncontrolled experiment. Don't get me started on the medical thing, and it's gotten worse. It's worse than it was 5 years ago. I travel all around the country. You know, and there's a place for medication, but, you know, needs to be a lot more conservative. Okay, there was another question.
Dr. Gray, if you could talk about the biggest break or the most positive event that happened to you in your industrial design career.
Industrial design career? Well, very early on, you know, I was designing all those dip vats. And sometimes something happens that makes an opportunity. The scabies mite came into Arizona, and the feed yards in Arizona, this would have been early 70s, you know, like 75. And the feed yards now had to build all these dip vats. They were required by the USDA. I got to design 75% of them. Boy, it was just like instant work. You know, and I got one built that was really good. The other feed yards liked it. And the thing in the movie where they put the metal plate in there, that actually did happen. Actually did drown those cattle. We did go back and get it fixed. And then when the other feed yards saw it was fixed, all the other feed yards had to have one too. That put my business on the map. And the cattle magazines actually did come in and see it. You know, that wasn't very nice for the cattle that happened. But in terms of getting my business going, it was a lucky break.
Temple, how has your visual thinking helped you in discovering animal behavior in these processes?
Well, animals don't think in language, so animals are going to be a sensory-based thinker. Think in pictures, think in sounds, think in smells, think in touch sensations. I tell people working with animals, you got to get away from language. You know, the movie really shows very nicely how my visual thinking works. The movie's very clinically accurate in terms of showing visual thinking, showing anxiety, and showing sensory problems. And you know, I've seen things where animals can get very specific fear memories. Like in my book, Animals in Translation. By the way, the bookstore is supposed to still be here afterwards. And there was a horse that got scared to death of black cowboy hats. Because when he was abused, he was looking right at a black cowboy hat. White hat's fine. But you see, a white hat's a different picture than a black hat. A man on a horse and a man on the ground. That's viewed as two totally different file folders for cattle. See, a man on the ground, man on the horse, different picture. A dog will have one set of behaviors on the leash, another set of behaviors off the leash. See, the brain actually does set up file folders and put pictures and smells and other things into it. And another thing that helped me in my work with animal behavior was when I figured out that other people didn't think the same way I did. And I kind of discovered that when I started asking people about the church steeples. See, now why church steeples? Because if I ask you a house or car, most people visualize their own house or car. But I ask you something you don't own, but everybody has to see them. That's when I picked up the generalized image. Okay, research now knows where that generalized image is. It comes out of the association cortex of the brain rather than the primary picture files. Most people think out of the association cortex rather than I'm digging down all the way down to the primary files. So my concept of what a steeple is a whole bunch of pictures that come up like this, put them in the steeple folder. Then there's some other pictures that go in the cell phone tower folder, like weird fake silos, fake trays, plain old regular ugly cell phone towers.
Hi, Temple.
The fake windmill thing, they got that one on the way to the airport. The silo, the windmill, we don't have the fake tree. Okay, that's all. Okay, way there in the back.
Hi, Temple. How can nurses and other healthcare workers better advocate for their patients with autism?
Well, biggest problems, I think that's sort of a very generalized kind of question, but medical issues, medical procedures can be really scary. I hated getting shots. One thing is no surprises. The dentist can really be a big problem. Let the child go to the dentist when it's not busy and sit in the chair. Listen to some of the tools. Surprises cause panic. You don't want to spring a surprise on them. Doctor did that with me and said, look out the window, look at the pretty birdie, and whammo, I got a shot. And I was throwing a big one.
Temple?
Yep.
You've had a movie made of your life, and you've had a successful career. What's next for you in the next 2 to 5 years? What do you want to do?
Well, I've been doing nonstop speaking engagements, and when I have, like a mother comes up to me and says, well, my kid went to college or got a job because of, one of my lectures or one of my books, I think that's something of value. I've also served as an advisor to a number of graduate students. I've got 4 students that have gotten PhDs with me, and my 5th one's probably going to be graduating in December. And they've gone out and had good jobs. I work really hard to make sure my students get placed in good jobs. I actively go out and look for jobs for them. I think that's part of my job. I put, they got to have a good career, getting their career going. I put a lot of emphasis on all the job stuff. We're not thinking enough. What are they going to do when they grow up? And we need to start thinking about that in middle school, so you can start kind of a slow transition into learning some of the things for work. I probably for a while I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements. I'm still making sure I have time to do some of my professional things, like I'm an animal welfare auditor instructor. I have to, they have a class twice a year for that. I had to make sure that got on the calendar. I certainly plan to keep teaching my class at CSU and make sure I'm home on the Tuesday afternoons, for half of each semester to do my short course. I teach animal behavior in the veterinary college. These are all things I definitely plan to keep doing, because I think it's really important that I still do things with my career. People say, why don't you just work full-time on autism? Well, I still want to have a career and do cattle things that have nothing to do with autism, because this gets into identity. I'm seeing some young autistic kids getting so hung up on being autistic that that's become their fixation. Well, my fixation was all my cattle stuff, and that's something that turned into a career. And it bothers me a little bit to see a 10-year-old come up to me at a conference, wants to tell me all about his autism. I'd rather have him tell me about his science project, or some poetry he wrote, or how he can play a musical instrument, or something like that. Something that he can turn into a career. I'm seeing too many of the smart, geeky kids on the high end of the spectrum that ought to be working in Silicon Valley, not going down the right route. And that really concerns me. My science teacher really got me turned around, but I'm also realizing that my 50s upbringing had a lot to do with it too, because some of the problems I'm seeing today, like not getting to work on time, I didn't have that problem. I had a lot of problems in college with the dorm. I got stuck in a room with 2 roommates. 3 girls in a room, that was horrible. Couldn't sleep, couldn't study. That's not going to work. But once I had decided that I was going to go to school and I was going to study, I got to class on time and I got my homework turned in. High school, I took care of the horses, but I didn't care about studying. But I was learning some valuable work skills. You know what? I'd get to class on time and sit through it.